Hey there. Thanks for checking us out. I'm Dan O'Connor here in Raleigh, North Carolina with the Triangle Pinball Club, and I'm going to discuss some details about my particular Star Trek The Next Generation arcade pinball machine. But before I do that, I want to give a little bit of a shout out to a couple of the fellows who inspired me and my son to make this video. Those guys are the great Chris Bucci, John in his fantastic basement arcade, and our wild-eyed crazy Uncle Todd Tucky. So from my own modest basement game room, gentlemen, thank you very much. My son and I have really enjoyed watching your videos. We really appreciate the work you've done on them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Star Trek The Next Generation is a pinball machine that was designed by the one and only Steve Ritchie, and it sold about 11,700 games starting in November 1993, which was kind of the end of the real salad days for Bally Williams. The rise of one-on-one fighting videos like Street Fighter II, which earned by itself $1.5 billion in 1993, the year this game came out. There was also Mortal Kombat, of course, Tekken, and so on and so on. And there was also a rise in those ticket redemption games that are so prevalent these days. Those games were really taking off around this time too. And all these things was really starting to put a squeeze on the pinball coin. You know, put simply, operators were being offered lower maintenance, more profitable ways to spend their equipment dollars in the form of these one-on-one fighters and these ticket redemption games. Even new DMD pins at this time, I remember, were being ignored in the corners of arcades because everybody wanted to play Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat, and, you know, maybe they want to try that week's new flashy redemption game, you know. In a way, the pinball industry somewhat kind of lost its way, and if I may be permitted to editorialize a little bit. In the earlier 90s, the big successes of games like Addams Family and Twilight Zone raised the budgets for the design teams at Bally Williams. And so basically they were giving really, really smart people basically unlimited free reign to really impose limits only on themselves and just really do what crazy talented people do. And they did. Unfortunately, these new super complex games, and if you look here on the apron, this is one of the super pins. Super complex, more like it, right? These games were really a challenge for route operators. And frankly, they found a really simple video cabinet like a Street Fighter II much more profitable because of how comparatively easy it was to keep running as compared to this thing. Now, I'm not going to try and lift the playfield now, but trust me, it is a spaghetti plate under there. Maybe we'll look at that on a later video. But the complexity and the maintenance hassle of modern pinball, in the eyes of the route operator, right, which had already been an issue for many years, games like this were just making it much more considerably worse. And Addams Family and Twilight Zone, Johnny Lunchpail, goes out on a route call, better bring the manual, right? These games were a bear to keep running. And in order for the games to make any money, well, they've got to be kept running, right? System 11, this was not. But the reality is, no one with coins in their pocket wants to play a dirty game that doesn't work, right? That's just basic arcade economics. On the operator side, nobody wants to spend time maintaining a complex piece of machinery like this that's not making them any money, right? And it doesn't matter that the reason it's not making money is because it's dirty and it doesn't work because it hasn't been maintained. It doesn't matter, right? So, in order to satisfy what was a relatively small group of hardcore players that were seeking more and more complex pinball experiences, right? And to compete with the advancing video technology, which was increasingly captivating, Bally Williams ended up alienating two key customer segments, I think. They were alienating the game operators because by making the games increasingly complex mechanically and difficult to maintain and therefore ultimately less profitable, operators were scratching their heads. And the casual pinball player of even just 4 or 5 years previously was probably really scratching their heads at these games. They were really a different animal. This vicious cycle was really kind of becoming a close to fatal self-inflicted wound for pinball as a whole. And in my opinion, this is a problem that pinball is probably always going to struggle with until the mechanical approach to pinball manufacturing, I think, really changes. The parts becoming much more modular and streamlined and interchangeable and so forth. I mean, the arcade economic reality is unless the operator faithfully maintains the game so it functions properly and keeps the machine attractive for the player's coin, right? How many times have you gone up on a pin on location and it's black from, just not being cleaned at even a basic level? It doesn't make you want to put coins in it. The fact is pinball is going to have a built-in disadvantage without maintenance when it's on location against competition that works reliably and provides a consistent experience. I mean, that's just reality, right? But enough editorial. Star Trek was the lowest selling of the big early to mid kind of 90s Bally Williams blockbuster games, right? It was the littlest giant. All these names. Addams Family sold 20,000 units. We don't see stern numbers, but I think everyone safely assumes that record still stands. Next was Twilight Zone, Terminator 2, both sold 15,000 games. Fishtails and Getaway each sold 13 grand. And they made 12,000 Indiana Jones machines. And then next was this one at 11,800. And then right after that, the numbers drop off pretty far. After that, it's World Cup Soccer 94, which sold 8,700 games. And then Creature from the Black Lagoon sold 7,800. So just a little bit of an idea as to where this game ranks in terms of sales with some of the other big hits of the early to mid 90s. I think this game may have been released a couple of months too early, maybe. Though, from what I understand, the development process for this game was pretty lengthy, and I wouldn't doubt it. It just had a lot of new stuff in it, and it was highly involved to put together. But maybe with a bit more time in the development oven, so to speak, maybe some of the kinks would have been worked out of what was then very cutting-edge pinball technology. And maybe the license would have had a bit more time to develop and gather a bit more of a following, which it eventually did. But then maybe they would have put the right board chip back in the back. Anyway. The technical improvements and some of the kind of sales environment changes that might have happened during that time may have sold them another couple thousand of these games. Especially if the delay made the game more reliable for operators, right? I mean, I wonder how much sales kind of tapered off after the initial games were on the street and those initial maintenance issues started coming up. I wonder how much that might have pushed checkbooks back into operator pockets. Well, anyway, that's a little bit about the sales environment that this game was released into. And then maybe in the next video, I'll talk a little bit about maintaining this game. You've probably read some horror stories online. They're all true. And how I managed to actually purchase this particular machine, right? So are you still there? Are you awake? Well, anyway, try out part 2 and maybe see if this gets any better, all right? Thanks a lot for watching this part.